This episode is brought to you by Red Bike Delivery. This delivery service operates only using battery-powered, eco-friendly transportation. Red Bike Delivery is there for all your delivery needs, whether it's dinner for the family, flowers for your partner, or new houseplants for your new collection. Red Bike Delivery will gladly deliver those and everything in between. So what are you waiting for? Check out Red Bike Delivery on Facebook or Instagram for more information. Red Bike Delivery, because there's only one Earth. Welcome to the Rising Above podcast. My name is David Hess, and today I have Elizabeth Ramirez with me. She is from Texas, and she has an incredible story. She is an exoneree, and I don't really want to steal her thunder. I'll let her explain what happened. But with that being said, could you introduce yourself? Tell me where you were born and raised. Are you originally from Texas?
Yes. So my name is Elizabeth Ramirez. I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. I'm an exoneree, and I'm part of the San Antonio Four. We were wrongfully accused and exonerated in 2016. We were found actually innocent, and all our charges were expunged in 2018. Back in 1994, so I'll give you a little background on the case. Back in 1994, I was picked up for questioning. My nieces, my brother-in-law, and my two nieces had accused us of sexually assaulting them, and me and my friends. So it was three other friends that I knew, one of them out of high school. And in 95, we got arrested. They had accused us because we were gay, that we had sacrificed my nieces in the altar. And I don't know if you remember the satanic panic at that time, back in the 90s. So we were kind of like the last gasp during that whole, scenario and time frame. And it was for lesbians. And I was tried first because they believed I was a ringleader. And so in 97, I got convicted of the crime and got 37 and a half years.
Wow. How old were you?
I was when it first started, 19, and when everything was pretty much all over, I was like 42.
Wow.
So it was long going, like 20 something years, 25 years that we fought the case. And it's been a long struggle since, kind of grew up in prison in my 20s and 30s and come home to a society that has been just grown so much. Technology, life itself just kept moving, and I was just kind of stuck in prison,
Right.
But I was grateful for the Innocence Project. They opened the doors, and how they say when you're in prison that everyone needs a voice from the outside, and that's kind of what happened for us. I met a gentleman from Canada, Daryl Otto, who helped with the case. We started off with the NCRJ. And then we went from the NCRJ to the Innocence Project. They took over, and then we, went through the polygraphs and the sexual evaluations and the whole process of everything. And because I had so much time, I wasn't able to come up for parole. But the other three girls were able to come up for parole before I did. And so I did 17 years out of my 37 years. Where I was able to come out on bond. And so it was a difficult road because even though, I was out on bond and the Innocence Project was, we're in the process of still fighting for a new hearing. It was like, we came home, it was hard to find a job because, even though you're kind of like, you're fighting the case, everything still is in a standstill. You still have the charges. And so they did background checks. It was hard to find jobs. And every time we did, we had to explain the whole process to them. We still had to report. If they wanted us to take drug tests or whatever, we had to be available to do that. But we reported regularly, like every month, and went up there and it was a pretrial. And of course, yes. And have you been close to the victim? Have you, done anything any different or anything of that sort? So that's kind of how everything went till it was 2016 before we got exonerated.
Wow. That's a lot that you just unloaded.
Yeah.
um, what was it like? Because you were in your 20s when you were accused. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
What
nice. Mhm.
You were 19. What was your plans for life at that point? I mean, obviously you weren't planning on spending your life in prison. And when you got accused, what was life like at that moment?
When I was at that time, I was pregnant, and
Wow.
I was having my I was pregnant with my son, and it was I was gonna raise him alone. I was working at a Taco Cabana as a supervisor, and I had taken my CNA, and I kind of left the medical field because I had gotten really sick. You kind of get used to, the way of life working in the medical field, and I got real attached to my patients, and so I worked with a lot of elderly. And I had during that time, a lot of them were passing away, and being young and working, with patients that have illnesses, diabetes, and you just see them deteriorate. It was just too emotional for me. I got really attached to them, and I thought that was the kind of life I wanted because I love helping people. I love, reaching out and doing for others. But it was just so much for someone my age and still kind of, learning life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, wow. And then this happened. And it was like, what do I do now? Now here I am working to try to pay for an attorney, and I have a baby on the way. I'm going to raise him by myself. Like, what's next? And I had no idea what my life was going to be like. I knew that I didn't do anything wrong. I knew that I was innocent, and I would tell myself, how can they convict somebody for something they didn't do? Like, how do you prove that? How
Mm-hmm.
can you did something when I didn't do anything? And from then on, my life was just crazy. I didn't know what my next step was. So it's like I worked just to pay for my legal fees and try to enjoy the little that I could. And then after I had my baby in 95, they came and arrested us, and everything just started going from there.
Wow. And at that point, obviously, you have no hope, right?
Yeah. Yeah. At that time, it was like, even because I was gay, you know, Hispanic, female, I was poor. I didn't have any means. I'd never been in trouble. I didn't know the system. Uh, man, I couldn't even tell you what a civil attorney was to a criminal attorney. I was so naive with the system. And it's sad that, a lot of us growing up in that era, we don't talk about, getting into the law and things like that. Everybody kind of like, especially a Hispanic family, we kind of just go with life, and, we weren't thinking about things like that, or at least I wasn't. We're all good people. Me and my friends all, kind of just lived life and was just trying to work on our futures, and see, what life had for us, to go for, you know.
Right.
Um, and then all this just kind of took everything from us. And that was one of the things that I had a hard time with when I went to prison, is that, my friends, their lives, we were all young. And because they were associated with me, their whole life was taken from them. My best friend Cassie had two babies,
Mm-hmm.
and my son was just two when I left. It was
Wow.
hard to be torn apart from our children, and with the case that we had no contact with them, because of the charges. Of course, the prison system doesn't allow you to have contact with children under the age of 18. And so it was difficult to have that communication. Or, well, for myself, I didn't get any visits from my son. I got letters, as often as I could that my mom could, get for me, because his dad, used my charges against me to get custody of him. So I had no rights to him, you know.
Wow. That
And that
is
was frustrating.
that is so sad. I couldn't imagine that because I'm a father and I couldn't imagine, you know, going to prison and not being able to see your kids even in prison. It's tough.
I mean, you think about it, David, when you sit there, like for me, at night, I don't know, you kind of collect all your thoughts and you're like, okay, what did I accomplish today? what can I do better for myself for tomorrow, or what can I change to be a better person or be, and you think, and you sit there and you're like, well, I wonder what my son, his name is Hector. I was like, I wonder what Hector's doing. I wonder what he likes to eat. I wonder what his favorite color is. He was 2 when he was going to be 2 when I left, and he was 18 when I came home.
Wow. My gosh.
So it was hard. It was really hard to think about those things at night, and I would pray every night that God would protect them and send him good people to, protect, to watch him and guide him in the right direction and give him the love that I couldn't, because I didn't have any communication with him.
Right.
I wrote him plenty of letters, whether he got them all or not. But I, would draw pictures for him, and I always, said prayers for him and tried to keep that communication. And I got one letter from him back in 2003, and I have that letter framed.
Wow.
I've kept that letter since then.
What got you through prison? Because obviously going in at a very young age, losing your son, and looking at a very lengthy sentence, I would imagine that for most people that would be it. I know for me, I'd be like, I could end this right now. What got you through that?
I think for me was, at the beginning, going in there and not knowing the system, and it's kind of living two different lives. You're in there and you're like, now you have to survive, and you kind of become what the prison is, because you have to not show emotion. You can't, really cry and break down because people think you're weak. So you kind of learn to like deal with things like internal and become kind of unemotional.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but like you can't in your time, like for me, it would be in the shower when I, had a little time to cry where you can't tell I was crying and kind of throw water in my face and stuff. But I prayed a lot. If I would tell you that I went to church a lot, I did. And I think that was, how they say when you hit rock bottom, all you can do is look up. It's the truth. You have to hold on to something that would get you through it and make you feel like, every day I was fighting, and I knew that I couldn't give up. I had a son, at home in San Antonio. I had friends that were incarcerated that I needed to try to figure out a way for us to get home. I wrote letters for years. If I tell you, since '97 to 2010.
Wow.
Started helping with Daryl Otto. I never gave up. It was like, how they say your faith, you just keep going and believing, and something will come through,
Mm-hmm.
And I always believed that the truth would come out, and I would pray and pray and pray and just ask God, to bring people into my life, and to, make a way. And, a lot of times they say, I've heard so many sermons where people talk about, you have to have faith, you have to believe. And there's this little rock I've kept for a lot of years that says faith on there.
Okay. Yeah.
So like whenever I have hard days, this is what I kind of hold on to, because it was that carried me through. Everybody kind of has, their own belief and their own, strength that they, grab from. And mine was my faith that, one day, and I had peace. I had peace within myself because I knew that I didn't do anything wrong, and I could live with myself.
What kind of things did you do in your past time in prison? Obviously, you said you wrote some letters and you wrote friends and family members, and you drew. What other things did you do? Did you get an education while you were in there? Or?
Well, because I had so much time, I'm considered like the last resort for anyone to be able to get an education. It had to be someone like 15 to 10 years less.
Okay. Wow.
So they can, I guess, get the education or the training they need to go home. And so I wasn't able to do that. So what I did was I worked at the print shop. We had a TDC had a print shop. And I knew, I calculated all my years, and I would have been 62 years old before I would be able to come home. I knew that I was going to have to learn a trade. So much time had already passed that I needed to learn something that I could hold on to, that I could make a living with coming home. I mean, 62 years oh, what can you really do? Or how much strength will I have at that time? Or where would I be, health wise?
Right.
Printing is what I did. I learned how to work on the copiers, a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of here and there to be able to learn and to be able to take that with me. And that's kind of what I held on to. And in my mind, it was like the system couldn't take that from me. That was one thing that I could do for myself was feed myself and learn and take everything that I could to make me a better person out there and to be able to survive in the world of society with a trade.
Right.
And so I worked at the print shop and I learned everything I possibly could from shipping to a friend of mine used to do bids to graphic design to running machines.
Okay.
I can do something, even if it was just bindery work or something, I was able to do that. And I learned everything I possibly could so that I can have that trade and survive.
Is that applicable to being out of prison now?
Yes, actually, I
Yeah.
work at a
Oh, cool.
I'm going to school right now for a paralegal. I had actually taken a paralegal course incarcerated, and I have my certificate, but they don't really recognize it because it's through Stratford. And I guess I didn't have any access to like computers, but I did all my book work, which I have my transcripts. But either way, I'm going through my paralegal, so I'm at a community college right now,
Oh,
and
cool.
so I'm pursuing that. And so the print shop kind of works with me. I'm able to go to school and then go to work and still kind of pick up my hours. And so it's a balance, but yeah, everything that I learned in prison, I'm able to apply here outside when the world, as they call it.
Right. That's awesome. I'm happy that you were able to do something like that. I interview a lot of well, I've interviewed a couple junior lifers that have gone into prison at like in their teenage years and they don't get out until they're in 40 almost 40 years old. And a couple of them have gotten educations while they were in there. But one of the things is I wanted to mention was one of the guys I interviewed. He's an advocate for a thing here in Michigan that's called "Good Time Makes Good Sense," and what that is it's a program that not really a program, but legislation that they're trying to pass here in Michigan, where if you have good behavior in prison, it counts towards your sentence. So if you're good, if you have good behavior, they take time off your sentence because Michigan doesn't have anything like that. Like if they say you're serving 15 to 20 years, you're serving 20 years.
Right.
And so, but one of the things I had asked him, I was like, "How did you survive prison?" And he was like, everybody asks me that question. How did you survive prison? He's like, but the truth is I didn't. He's like, prison broke me, and I became part of that system. And when you had mentioned that you became part of that system, it reminded me of what he had said.
Yeah, you kind of there's a lot of things in there that you have to do. There was like elderly people there, and you would see them fall, or wanted to help them out, or some people that didn't get money to be able to eat, and you get in trouble if you kind of share your food or
Wow.
somebody out up and you hold their hand. They call it a sex case. You know,
Wow.
I already have an aggravated sexual assault and it's to a child. So something of that nature I would pick up, then of course it's going to look bad on parole if I ever came up for parole, you know?
Right.
And so it's hard. It was hard, you had to like be unemotional and, the charges that I had, I'm sure with other people you've interviewed, with different charges, it's different. And because mine is with a sexual assault to a child, people don't see that very lightly.
No, no. I mean, I'm sure most people, when they hear that, they're like, "Oh, wow, she's a piece of crap." How
Yes.
could you do that to a kid?
Yes.
When in reality, it was based on fabrication.
Right.
Yeah, I've interviewed some people. One of the guys I interviewed, he actually he tried doing a bank heist. That was an interesting one. And then another guy, he attempted murder, and so that was also interesting. And like sitting across the table from him, and he's telling me that he tried killing somebody. I'm like, but he's a super nice guy. He's out now and he's doing well. So, at what point in during your sentence did things start turning around for you? did you reach out to the Innocence Project and then they helped you?
Actually, I had reached out to the Innocence Project way before 2010. And because I didn't have any new evidence to present for the case, they had denied me.
Oh,
And so I don't know if you know like the process of the Innocence Project, but they kind of like look at your case and they like look at your transcripts and they see if there's any like new evidence they can have on your case to reopen it and find it. And so for me at the time when I wrote them and they told me, there was nothing they can do unless I had, new evidence, then, reach out to them. And so, and I can't remember what year that was. I remember I had saved the letter, but so that happened to me and I continued. I didn't give up. And so then I went on writerprisoners.com and I put an ad up for legal assistance. And I met a gentleman from Canada that was a professor. And I guess he was doing like a statistics or something on like sexual assault cases or like pedophiles or something. And he came across mine and he wrote me and I wrote him back and we continued corresponding. And he asked, hey, what happened? Why did you get charged? And I said, well, there's, tell me about your case. And I'm like, there's really nothing to say. I didn't do it. Me or my friends, none of us committed the crime. There's not much I can tell you about it besides the fact that we're innocent. And of course he continued, and then in 2010, there was an article with Michelle Mondo that came out on our case. And we put an application with the NCRJ, which is the National Coalition for Reason and Justice. And Daryl Otto got with them, and then we got in with the Innocence Project. And then Mike Ware took the case. He came to the prison and spoke to us and, told me, we're going to do a polygraph and then we'll go from there. We'll see, where that stands. If, we can, find out that you're inconclusive or, that you're telling the truth, then we can go from there. And so you already know when your life is, this is either going to make me or break me,
Right.
And so you're nervous and you're like, oh my God, I hope I answer the right thing. I hope, and I remember going in there, David, and I prayed and I was like, God, please, like, this is my opportunity to tell the truth and for someone to help us. I know you didn't bring me this far for me to just like fail and then, close the door, And so we took the polygraph. And so all four of us took the polygraph and the Innocence Project ended up taking our case.
Wow.
Then a little while later, my niece came forward and confessed that nothing had happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So after my niece came forward, I don't know if you've been able to see the documentary. But
I wasn't aware that there was one.
Yeah, it's called Southwest of Salem, the story of the San Antonio Four.
Okay, where can that be found?
Actually, you can. It from my understanding, I just found out that they have it on what is that little app? I think it's like Tubi or something, but it's on Amazon for sure.
Okay.
Amazon or I think it's on Hulu also.
Okay. And one more time, what was that called?
Southwest of Salem, the story of the San Antonio Four.
Okay.
It was during a panic, so remember Southwest of Salem. So, and if you just go like San Antonio 4, it'll pop up.
Okay.
You'll be able to see it. But in the documentary, what I liked about it is that it told all our stories. All four of us were able to kind of talk, and they interviewed us. The documentary was made very well with Deb Eskenazi. Javier Limon, which was my brother-in-law, came out on that. My niece came out. Where she met with Mike Ware and confessed to him that, nothing had ever happened. And during the time, whenever she did, my brother-in-law found out and tried to take her kids from her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he tried to take the kids from her. He took her to court and everything. And thank God that she kept custody of them and they denied him that. And of course, it was because he was angry that she was telling the truth. Unfortunately, my other niece didn't come forward, but she did. And then we had our hearing and we had, all these evaluations and polygraphs done and, all these things. And then finally we got out in 2013 and then, living out in the world and kind of readjusting into society. But every day was like, is today going to be my last day?
Right.
It's
What was it like coming out of prison? Because when you went into prison, it was in the 90s, correct?
right.
I was born in 93.
Oh,
So I'm a 90s baby, but growing up, obviously technology has like there's been such great progression with technology
mhm.
within the last 25 years. And when you went in, there wasn't really much technology. Computers weren't where they are now. Phones definitely were not where they are now. And then you got out kind of in the height of it all.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was, you know what? It was frustrating. If that's even the word I can use for that. I remember before getting, going into prison, they had the pagers. Remember the beepers that
Yep.
I pressed? What is it, like 911, when it was important for you to, return a call or something?
Yep.
But and I believe it was, those big old cell phones with the big thick antennas on the top.
Yeah, the big black bricks.
Yeah. That was what was out. So when I came home, if I tell you, I didn't know how to send an email. My mom had a flip phone for me when I came home. If I tell you how many people I had to apologize for hanging up on them, no idea how to use the buttons on them, and it was a little flip phone, so it was hard to just kind of learn every. I mean, it's like coming home and learning to walk all over again. Like it was hard. It was very frustrating. Trying to get your driver's license, your social security card, and a lot of us, David, don't have a family that to come home to.
Right.
Fortunately, I have my family and the support of the other girls, and all of us kind of stuck together and helped each other out. But not everybody has that. And it's sad because so much time passes by. When you have a wrongful conviction, that you come home and it's a whole new different world.
Mm,
How do you come back into a society that you don't recognize?
right.
We were driving back in the van and we had to stop for some gas. And we were looking and there was two girls talking, I guess changing out the trash and stuff. And we saw them kissing and we're like, oh my God, two girls can kiss out in public?
You could do that now?
You'll never see that ever before. It was so hard coming out in the 90s, all the gay bashing,
Right.
they looked at you crazy. And so you were never affectionate out in public ever. I never was. I barely even did anything, in the privacy of my own apartment, because I never, wanted my family or anybody to, kind of look at me crazy or whatever.
Right.
Coming out, we saw that and we were like all in shock. And then coming out here and seeing that, it was that, that lifestyle was accepted. And the technology was just so overwhelming because everything I remember, Cass and me tell the story all the time. We used to go to the stores and put applications.
Yeah.
It's done online.
Right.
Nothing was person to person. Like, sometimes you kind of want to meet the individual that's going to come work for your company. And
Right.
you don't do that anymore. So it was hard. It was hard to kind of learn all of that, the Wi-Fi system. I mean, even to this day, kind of remembering your password. And I'm not even gonna lie. I have a phone and I have all these numbers. Ask me if I know anybody's number. I don't.
I don't think anybody does. I don't. I know
I
my
see
wife's number. That's it.
you, and that's it.
Yep.
It's crazy. And then another thing that I kind of shocked me was, you went out to a restaurant and you don't see people talking very much anymore.
Yeah.
You
Everybody's
see,
glued to their phones.
yeah, kids are all on their iPads and their little game stuff, but you don't see people really carry a conversation anymore.
Right. It's sad, honestly.
Yeah, because you kind of like, I don't know, like for me, it's like you take life away, you take that life for granted, to experience, the getting to know someone, the conversation, the interaction.
Hmm.
Everything is just so cold now.
Right. Going in and then coming out in two different eras. Obviously, when you went in, things weren't as accepted. Like homosexuality wasn't accepted, and then coming out, I mean, everybody seems to be fine with people being gay. It's not an issue. Nobody's getting stoned in the streets over it, you know. There's not really protests over it now. I think the big thing is transgenders and whatnot. But does that make you have hope for the future as far as like where we are going as a civilization and the acceptance for things?
You know what? I would have to say yes or no. Because I would have to say, like, even though things are going the way they do now, I feel like it could still happen. I don't know, you see, lesbian couples or, guy couples that are trying to adopt children, and some are able to and some aren't. But there's still that little skepticism that, well, how can two females or two males really raise a child? It should be a female and a male.
Right.
Have that they're going to have that mentality that it's okay when it should be their decision,
Right.
whether that lifestyle or if it's accepting. But it's not because the children can get the love from two mothers or two fathers, because they can. But I think that even now it still happens. And even though it's accepting, people are, depending where you're at, you have, like, SanAntonio is still conservative,
Right. Isn't
so,
most of Texas isn't it?
so you kind of like still can face these things. And I mean, yeah, we've come a long way, but I think there's still a lot more that needs to be, a lot of change still as far as for the LGBTQ. Because you know what? You won't find an the gay organization or the LGBTQ really want to fight a case like ours. When we came home, we did reach out to them. And it was very difficult. It was something that, okay, when it comes to a child, we don't want to, kind of touch it because that's a sensitive subject.
Right.
I don't know if I really want to get involved in that because, I have kids here too. And I don't want that to, kind of come on to me and then they start looking into me or, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's still, I mean, it's difficult because it's such a sensitive issue and it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to face.
Right.
And it hits home for, people with children, if it's, the gay couples or heterosexual couples, when it comes to children, it's such a sensitive subject.
Absolutely. I mean, people are very protective of their children. I mean, obviously, you have a child, even though you weren't able to be a part of his life. I'm sure there was still that mom aspect of you wanting to protect him. So yeah, it's understandable to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Um, so when they started viewing your case, what was that like? Did you have like a sense of hope? Obviously, you said you kind of felt like God was giving you a second chance to be able to prove yourself. What were those feelings like?
You know what? It was amazing to know that, they were coming to interview us and they were going to start the documentary to kind of help, put our story out. But it was scary at the same time because, I had been knocked down so many times over the years. Like I wrote, nobody answered. I wrote, nobody answered. I reached out to the Innocence Project. They denied me the first time. It was like, and I didn't want to get my hopes up so high,
Right.
and but I knew that we still had, like, things were moving, And then when, Anna got out on parole and the Innocence Project was, working on it, I was like, wow, is this really happening? And even when we went to the county and the van came to pick us up, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, please, Lord, don't turn back and take us back. You know what I'm saying? Made a mistake or something, So when we end up at the county, it was like me, Cass, and Christy. And, we were at the county kind of waiting, for them to set bail and let us, come home. And it didn't sink in. Even though I had left prison and I was at the county, it still didn't sink in. I was like, okay, is this really happening? And then right before we were going to get out, they were having issues with Cassie's paper. Her paperwork and stuff. And so she was like, no, y'all can go. And we're like, no, like we've come this far all together. Like we're all walking out together,
Right.
And we finally walked out. It was amazing. There was so many people there to support us and everything. And you'll see that in the documentary if you get a chance to look at it.
Okay.
We had a big, great support of people that were there. And we walked out and everybody was hugging us. Our family was there and they were, accepting and everything. And we got into the vehicle and drove off. And I was sitting in there and I couldn't even cry because I was just so like overwhelmed with everything, you know?
Yeah.
And we ended up going to Anna's house. And because Anna had gone on parole and she was a registered sex offender, my son was 18 and he wasn't allowed to come to her house.
Why?
Because as a registered sex offender, you can't have anyone under the age of 18.
But he wasn't 18, you said.
No,
Oh,
he was
okay.
just 18.
Oh,
And
okay.
my son and Anna was on parole, so she had to live by her stipulations. So I crossed the street where my son was at, and that was the first time I held him since the day that actually I had a visit with him when he was 4. And I held him for the first time. And he said, "Mother," and hearing those words just broke me. And I just broke down in tears. And I told him, just hearing him and telling him I love him was just most amazing feeling ever a mother can have for a child, you know? And a lot of times his phone I would see and he would still have that picture of me and him
Oh,
for the first time that he held me. And it was crazy, you know? That night everything just seemed so unreal, so real. We went to go eat and, I kind of talked to him. But when I went back to my mom, she had an apartment and I sat on that sofa. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't sleep that night. I was so used to the loud noise. It was just so quiet and so still. It was like, what do I do? You know? And I kept tossing and turning because I wasn't used to sleeping. I'm used to a hard bunk and 17 years,
right.
And I mean, it was difficult. I mean, it was just the transition. It was just, I don't know. It was hard. It was really hard. But it was amazing to be able to experience that with my son, though.
I could imagine. I it's kind of crazy because you see these videos. I don't know if you're on social media at all, but there's these videos that people post of like a parent who goes, to Iraq or comes back from a war or from active duty,
Mhm.
and they'll show up to the kid's school and the kid will come running and they're all excited because they haven't seen their parent in, months. And those videos, like, I don't know, they do something to me. They get me like, happy, and they're emotional and sad. And I listening to you tell that is surreal because that was 17 years that you had missed out on, and then you're now holding him as an adult, essentially an adult.
Yeah,
It's so sad, but joyous at the same time.
right, right. Because you get that fulfillment that, oh wow, I'm holding my baby, and
Yeah.
he's always gonna be my baby, you know, because I missed out so much, but and he's my only child, you know, and so he's my everything, you
Right.
know. If I tell you, David, that it wasn't until last month, I've been home 2013. My son's married, and I've had my second grandchild. But if I tell you that not even a month ago was the first time that we sat down and talked.
Wow.
When I first came home, I didn't realize, he shared a lot with me, and there's a lot of things he wished he would have done different. He was living with his father and his stepmom, and he didn't know he was kind of being pulled with me and them, because he had been with them for so long, and here I was, his mom hadn't seen in 17 years, and he wanted to just be with me,
Right.
but in time his dad and his stepmom were kind of pulling him.
Right.
Um, it was hard for him, and he wishes he would have done a lot of things differently, you know. But it was the first time that we talked, and it was the first time that I can kind of see where his mind frame is at, and how life kind of treated him over the years. Because I asked him a lot of questions like, "How was your childhood? How were you treated? Did anyone ever bully you? What was your first love? You know,
Right.
all those things.
Yeah.
And um, and those are the things that you hold precious, in your life of your children. I mean, for someone like you to have children, to with their first walks, their teeth, when they come out, and
Yeah.
the little things they do that are just so memorable. I wasn't able to experience that.
I can relate to your son on some in so many different aspects because I was in foster care and I was taken away from my mom at 9 years old. So I knew my mom, going in,
Mhm.
and being taken away so abruptly like that left a hole, because I loved my mom. I adored her. Like I was, she was like my best friend for the longest time. And then, we were taken away and it left a hole. And so when I became an adult and I found her at the age of 18, kind of like, your son and you, reuniting, it was the same thing. It was like this feeling of joy and sadness because she had missed out on so much, and she would never know. She still would never really know like everything that I had gone through, and just like how you really probably will never know everything your son went through. But that, I think it's beautiful that you guys were able to sit down and talk and you were inquisitive and wanting to understand what he had been through. That's very important.
Yeah. Because I want to know, like, the man that he is now. He's in the military. He's a Marine,
Oh, cool.
and he, whenever he had first came home, he talked about how he wanted to go do and protect the country and do all these things. And I'm like, he's such a good kid, and that's my son. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then coming home and then him leaving into the military, it was hard because we didn't have that time to kind of get to know each other and heal. Even though he did come live with me after a little while, he ended up going to Japan, and he was in Okinawa for a while.
Mm.
And so it was hard for him to come home, during the holidays. And when he did, I mean, being young, in your 20s, you come see your mom, yeah, yeah, but then you want to go see your buddies, dude. You want to go hang,
Right.
go, did you miss out? I'm in the military. I want to go see what they're up to, you
Yeah.
know? And so, we did spend our time together, but it wasn't like it is now. Now that he's a dad, he's got 2 kids, he's married, he's a little more settled, and his way of thinking is different. So
Right.
it's an adult kind of thing,
Yeah.
where be there, and for him to know that, I'm here to help support him, and I'm here for anything that he needs. I'm his mother. Like I tell him, I'm your mom. I'm always going to be here. As long as God gives me breath, I will be by your side at any moment, you know?
That's awesome. That is beautiful, because a lot of times, and in my situation included, it situations like that harden people, and they can look at it like for instance, from my mom's point of view, she at first didn't really want to have a relationship with me because she, knew I had adopted parents and she didn't want to take away from what I had with them. And I'm like, no, like you're not. There's plenty of love to go around.
Right.
I can love everybody just as equally. And, kind of like your situation, your son was being pulled one way and you probably didn't want to be pulling back, and it yeah, it's a balance that needs to be worked out, but that's beautiful that you guys were able to work that out.
And there was times though, like his dad and his stepmom and myself, we had to sit down and talk, and we did things together. We on his birthday sometimes we will all get together, and you have to be adults. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have my son that he has his dad and his mother, and we just have to be adults and act accordingly. Whether you or not, like that's my son and that's his father.
Right.
But really blessed that we're able to get along, and we're able to talk about things, and things like that. And that's important to me because I don't ever want my son, like you said, to feel like he has to make a decision.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm grateful for everything that they did for him over the years. I'm so, I'll always be, grateful for that. I've told them both, now he has me too in his life. So, he has love from everywhere, and it doesn't have to just be only from me.
Right.
I've always believed the more love, the merrier. It's
Exactly.
I mean, you can't go wrong to be, you know,
No.
and for him to feel supportive and have that, I mean, it's amazing, because
Yeah.
not every person has that. It can harden people or, it can, just continue to grow, and you can share that love and, make it together.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, you obviously work at a print shop now, but when you got out of prison, what did life look like? Did you just jump back into the workforce? Did you have any things you wanted to do when you got out? Do you have any goals that you are
Well,
embarking on?
Whenever I first came home, like I said, we're out on bond, right? So it was kind of hard, well, for me, because, the girls had 10 and 15. I had 37 and a half. And so I still hadn't completed my time where, if things didn't go right, I would still have to go to prison and finish my time. And so during the time frame, I was like, I didn't know what to do. Like, what if it didn't turn out the way it did? And I had to go back to prison.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult for me. I didn't know. I was afraid to, like, I first went home and I was like, I need to work. Being in prison and being told what to do every day. You have a routine. I needed that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I needed that. And so I needed something to look forward to every day, get up in the morning and go to work and do, routine things. And so, like, 2 weeks after I got out, I found a job at the print shop, and I called in. And for a few months, I ended up working at Toyota. And if I tell you that, you work in the assembly line, and you work
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. I don't know if it's my internet or if it's. Can you hear me just fine?
huh?
Okay.
You mind, huh?
So it's on my end. Can you talk?
Uh-huh. So yeah, I ended up working for Toyota.
Okay, I can hear you just fine now.
So I worked for Toyota for about 3 years, and which they knew my background. They knew that I was fighting the case, and they hired.
You worked on the assembly line?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
I work
yeah.
at GM, so
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I worked for Toyota, and I worked in the paint department, and so, and the hours 6 to 6. We have the rotating shifts, 2 weeks days, 2 weeks nights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and but you know what? I loved it because being in prison for so long, the long hours, that kept me occupied. Like, my focus was work, 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 work.
Right.
And while I was waiting to see what was going to happen, I had went to our hearing, and we're just kind of waiting for the courts to decide what was going to happen. But I didn't want to buy a vehicle because I was like, okay, what if I don't get exonerated? I'm going to leave my family with a vehicle again. What if I tried? I couldn't get an apartment because they don't let me. So I tried to get a home, and then I was like, if I buy a home, I'm going to leave my family and get a home. So what do? I don't do anything. I just keep doing what I do, and I do my working. I could not. I could not build or look forward to a future because I didn't know what was going to happen. And so 2016, when I did, and we had already got our hearing and everything, and I was like, I need to believe that things are going to turn out. And so I ended up getting me a vehicle. I got me a little Tacoma, and then I saved up some money and went and got a home. And your credit score from coming out of 2013 to 2016, really work on that to be able to afford a home.
Right.
So I finally got a home, and there in November, right before Thanksgiving, we got exonerated.
Wow.
And if I tell you, when I asked my attorney, I mean, is this true? What do you mean we won? What does that mean, we won? I was like, and I sat there in my living room because I had worked nights that night, and I got up and I was like, we won. What does that mean, we won? So I asked my attorney, he's like, we won, and you got exonerated. And I'm like, what? And so my son was like, Mom, what's wrong? Runs out of his room, and I was like, baby, I got exonerated. I'm free. No shit, Mom, really? And I'm like, can you believe it? So of course we're both crying, hugging each other and everything. And of course the media gets whiff that, we got exonerated. So we start, the interviews and all that together. And if I tell you, I sat on the sofa And I was like, what do I do now? I've been
Right.
fighting for 20 something years.
Right.
What do I do now? What do I really want to do with my life? Now that I have the chance that they're not going to take me away from my family and my baby, what do I really want to do? I never asked myself that question. And I never thought I had that chance,
Wow.
you know? And it took me a while before I can, sit down and I'm like, and then I was like, man, Liz, you haven't been in school in so long. I don't know how to use it. I'm a one finger bandit there typing, you know what I'm saying? And I was okay. So I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna work. So I kind of like, built up a little bit and did what I had to do. And then I finally had the guts to take the TSI test and go forward and start school.
Wow.
And that's where I was. But to be honest with you, it's like you fight for so long and then you're finally free and then you're sitting there and you're like, what do I do?
Now what?
Now it's like, how do I walk again? It's like
Right.
I got it going here and then here I am. Now what do I do here?
Right.
You know? And shortly after I have, I was in a relationship and, kind of that, that's difficult too because, meeting people, you have to kind of tell them about your past and it's hard,
I
you know?
I couldn't imagine because I mean, oftentimes like my story comes up, people are like, just through conversation, people want to know your past, and so like I constantly have to tell people like, oh yeah, I was in foster care, and then I go through that whole spiel or whatever. I couldn't imagine having to tell people your story. Couldn't imagine that because instantly they either look at you with like judgment or they're like, oh my gosh, like you are a strong person for going through that.
I have a lot of people that worked in the line with me until and they were working in the line and they saw the news. And when they would see me on the news, they would come to work and look at me and then they're like, and nobody wanted to ask me, nobody would ask me anything.
Right.
They might tell you the conversations. They're like, oh, have you, hey, we went to go eat here. Have you been here? And I'm like, no. Oh, have you seen this movie? And I'm like, no. Where have you been all these years? And I'm like, oh my God. Don't ask. It's so sad that I had like no relation to my coworkers.
Right.
You I couldn't relate to them about a movie that came out last year, or a restaurant that had opened, back then. I was, oh yeah, I remember that was there. That's been gone for like 10 years. What are you talking about? And so, like, oh my God, like, how do you? And it was hard for me to like get up to date with everything and just have a normal conversation with someone. And I would feel like I couldn't talk, or I didn't want to talk because I didn't want nobody to kind of feel like, or judge me,
Right.
like judge
Right.
me for my past, and then be like, oh wow, she is the one that's there, or whatever. But you know what? I never to this day have had anyone come to me in a negative way or aggressively or anything like that. I've been truly blessed that no one has ever tried anything like that.
That's amazing, especially considering that you worked at a factory.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I know how people are in a factory and they're not nice. They're pretty judgmental. They just like to assume things and but that's remarkable that nobody has come at you that way.
Yeah, it's a blessing for real. Because I always wonder when's that person going to come out and be like, oh, that's that child molester, and no, 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 and go off, and you know,
Yeah.
but thanks to God, you know. And I'm very fortunate because people will come up and be like, "Aren't you Liz, one of the San Antonio Four?" And I'm like, "Should I say yes? Say no? Is this going to be a good thing or is this going to be a bad thing?"
So you've kind of become like a celebrity, right?
Kind of, people say that, but I don't feel like that, you know.
Well,
Uh,
it's
you but a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, can we take pictures?" or things like that, and of course, I don't say no, but yeah, a lot of people will recognize from the documentary, and they're in San Antonio, where they're like, "Man, you know what? I I never even heard of that story until you guys came home," you know,
right.
and they're like, I can't believe that that's what was happening during the time. And I'm like, a lot of us did it, the social media, the way it is now is just, I mean, you can do everything and anything on social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, the things that happen now.
Well,
And
and back then there wasn't social media, so the coverage, it probably got like no coverage at all.
well, yeah, and then when it did have coverage, we were like all these monsters, we were just
Right.
like real, painted this horrible picture of us, and then I was so skeptical about that whenever, they were trying to write stories about our case and stuff. Because I'm like, are they going to try to write good or are they going to try to write bad?
Right.
You know? And that was the same thing with the documentary. Whenever she first approached us about making a documentary, I was like, man,
What's the
it's,
narrative?
yeah, are you going to tell our story or are you going to try to like, make us look bad or, what's going to go on?
Right.
And we were like, we only want the truth. We want our story to be told the truth, the right way. Nothing ever happened for this case to even come about.
Right.
And so, and the documentary, I mean, they did a very good job on it.
I'm excited to watch it. I can't wait to watch it. I honestly didn't know that there was one. I wish that the guy from the Innocence Project had told me about it because I would have watched it before I talked to you.
Yeah, because you would have been able to understand and kind of relate to, what we've been through in the time and be able to, kind of put yourself in that error of,
Right.
because it was crazy. All the things that were said and done in my trial and how the DA even, when I went to trial, they used another Elizabeth Ramirez to try to inflame the jury's mind to make them to believe that I had a past.
What?
Yes, and it was another individual that was like, I think they accused me of the crime that I wasn't even born yet, and
Wow.
just to inflame the jury's mind because, right after my case, he became a judge
Oh
on,
my god.
on the same seat that the judge that passed away in the court that I was tried in.
Oh my
I
gosh.
kid you not. And so, people go to lengths to try to get to where they want, and they
Yeah.
forget that they took an oath in the
Right.
system. You're supposed to seek justice and truth, not your own vengeance and your own, your whatever it is you're seeking for yourself. I'm trying to figure out a word for it, but
It's personal gain.
yeah,
That's all it is. Is they're trying to use, and they're not seeking justice. They're just trying to use the people who come through their courtroom as props to get themselves in a higher seat.
yes, exactly. As Will said, yeah, that's exactly what it was, and that's what happened. And it was really sad, that my case, even going through the trial and everything, and you would hear, the questioning and stuff where the stories kept changing, you know. And whenever I went on trial and I testified for myself, the girls were in the courtroom and they smiled at me. Now, if I had done such a horrible, heinous crime, why would they have done that?
Right.
If they were so terrified of me, you would have thought that they wouldn't have been in the same courtroom as myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there were so many things that I had so many questions for, and I was just so, like, so unemotional about everything because I was like, how?
How is
Like,
this happening?
how? you know and then it's hard because they're females and I'm a female, and it's not like you can use DNA, it's not like you can use all these things.
Right.
you know it's just their word or their dad and grandma's word opposed to our word.
So there was no evidence.
No, so in the documentary you'll see that they had at the 3 o'clock hymen, and the medical examiner actually had signed an affidavit saying that that was old science. And it was actually, I believe, the flash from the picture that they took that showed. So it was really the flash that made it look like there was something that could have happened.
Wow.
And it was old science. So, um, it's crazy. But,
But that's
that,
that's all they had was
yeah,
that,
was that
and you got convicted on that.
just hearsay. Because they said they were playing with dolls and everything else. And then when my niece came forward, everything she said was like, yeah, we played with dolls, but it was nothing like that. And she goes on to talk about in the documentary how I would cook for them and how they were when we were growing up. The sad thing is that what people do, you pick up your nieces and your nephews. I mean, I didn't have any kids at the time. They were like, hey, will you watch the kids and so and so? Like, sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what we do. They want to go out and have a good time. They've been working all week. Like,
Right.
you know, what's so wrong with that? There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. That's what families do. But, during that whole time, it was like, how still, all because my brother-in-law didn't like the fact that I was gay, and he was interested in me and wrote me letters, and he refused to, to take, to engage in any of that. And so he lied, and he made up this big old story because he didn't like the fact that I was gay.
How old was your niece?
I think they were like 7 and 9.
Wow, so she was old enough to know
Yeah.
and
And
to tell the truth.
and the whole time, I mean, even at the age that she was like in her 20s when she came forward with it, he still tried to have that control by trying to take the kids away from her.
Right.
you know so it was just, it's crazy that he, and it, the sad thing about it is that we're not the only case. It's like he marries women and then like takes the kids or has kids with them and says that they were assaulted and tries to take custody of them. And it's like, I believe there was like a 10-year-old, one of his stepsons, he ended up accusing them of the same thing, and the little boy is actually a registered sex offender
Because of it.
because of it. And so it's like an ongoing thing. There was someone that he accused, I think one of my sister's friends or brother-in-laws or something, and they had accused them of it. And there was supposedly like a 10-year-old kid that had molested them or something. And that was before us that he had done that and went and got my sister at gunpoint. So it's just like a pattern that he had. And you kind of see it in the documentary. They kind of talk about it a little bit. And he's just, I don't know. And, we can't do anything about it. Even if we try to, it's what, a civil case?
Right.
There's not anything you can really do. But, like they say, karma, what goes, eventually, it may not be today or tomorrow, but,
Yeah.
We all pay for the things that we do in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, whether you believe in karma or just, I believe in like whatever. If you do good things are going to typically happen to you. If you do bad things, then bad things are going to happen to you, and that, I guess that's karma. But I don't know. It's just that is insane. And you and the three other women were compensated for your time, but obviously that's not near enough, to make up for the lost time and the loss of relationships and everything. Correct?
Anna lost, her dad in the process. I lost my dad. Cass lost her dad, and Christy lost her mom. So, all these years that we didn't have with our family, and we did, it wasn't enough time to spend with them.
Right.
And there's no amount of money or anything that can make up for that. They can't bring back all the memories we lost, but what else? They can't ever take back all the stuff we saw, all the things that we went through in life in there, and that have made us, the women that we are today. And I think that that's why, everyone kind of does their part. Cassie works for domestic violence. Anna works with the Innocence Project as well,
Oh,
and
cool.
continue to do, talks, interviews, and things, and trying to get my paralegal, to try to help in any kind of way I can, and because I feel like there's no way I can get anything more than that. I'm already like in my late 40s,
Sure,
I
you
mean,
could.
like I'm in my 50s, almost 60. But to me, it's like I'm taking that step at least, try to educate myself and try to help other people. And
Right.
it's important for people to know like the impacts of wrongful conviction. That it's not only us that are doing the time, but it's our family, our children,
Yeah.
and it affects everyone around us. Society itself. You know, I did a paper just recently on the Central Park Five. When they see us documentary,
Yeah.
I have a passion. They're like, Liz, why are you always doing, wrongful convictions and and I'm not going to tell the students, I don't, I don't know if I should open that door or not, or like, well, I always do wrongful convictions or things that go, with the legal system because I have a passion because it's affected me.
Right.
I was, I'm an exoneree and I was wrongfully accused, and my whole life changed in one instant.
Right.
Someone said something, my whole life changed in 1994. you know and I feel that people need to be aware of that, you know
Right.
and so that for me, if I can at least plant that seed somewhere, then I feel like I've given back, even though they took so much from me. I'm able to give that back. If
That's
that makes sense.
that's truly amazing, because for somebody who, was, I guess, essentially abused by the system. You were thrown into a system when you shouldn't have been. It was unjust. And for you to want to give back and to help is truly remarkable. It kind of shows what kind of person you are, because a lot of people, uh, myself included, when you get thrown into a position that you don't want to be in, because and you had no say in the matter, a lot of people become bitter. And I probably would be bitter, and I don't know if I would want anything to do with that system once I got out of it.
You know
So
what? You know what, David? What makes me think, like, even because people would tell me, like, I don't understand. You all are always laughing, and you have so much like happiness and so much wanting to give still. And that's because I never wanted the system to feel, or even yeah, the justice system to feel that they broke me so much that I'm like, no, I got my freedom and I'm gonna stay quiet. I feel like this is my way to say, no, you did wrong. And look at me. I'm a human being. I'm not a number.
right,
This isn't just another case. I'm not 829689. I'm Elizabeth Ramirez. I was wrongfully convicted. You know, I'm not that number. And I feel like if I don't speak that out and I don't try to do that, make that difference, then they won. You
right,
know, and it's the same thing like with Javier, like to let him know that he took that from me. But and for me to go out and talk about it and to not be angry, my whole life was changed. But you know what? I'm a better person. I learned, so much while I was incarcerated, and it built my character, and I'm a strong woman behind it. And I'm gonna share that, you know,
yeah,
that that I want other people, to not, if there's anything I can do to prevent another person from going through what I went through, then I'm doing the right thing, you know?
absolutely,
So, and for me, that's where I guess my peace from it, because I don't want the system to feel, if I was angry, it'll just keep eating me up, and I can never be happy. I can never be, you know,
right.
and I don't ever want to feel that way.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. Obviously, you're an advocate for, other people who have been wrongfully convicted, and I think that there's a huge pushback right now, due to the, just the internet and having like podcasts and YouTube and all these different, all these streaming services, like where your documentary is, wherever that's at. Um, Due to all these platforms covering like these type of stories, I think um, there's a huge understanding that a lot of people have been wrongfully convicted and are still in prison to this day for things that they should not be in prison for. And so I think there's a pretty big pushback, and thanks to people like you, that is possible.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I think it's important because, like I said, if they don't see it, then you'll never know it.
Right.
Don't hear it, no one will ever know or understand, you know? So, and like I said, a lot of people don't realize what the wrongful conviction, the impact that it has, in society itself.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about, the Central Park Five, and I was like, these kids were 16 years old. I was 19, but these kids were 16 years old. None of them even knew each other,
Wow.
and they were telling on each other and telling on each other, didn't even know each other. But these coerced confessions, the way these interrogations are, that's what we fight today, so that they can tape interrogations, they can see how they're coercing them, how
Right.
they're like, you were there, and then you're so tired, and for hours, I don't know if you saw the documentary, but for hours they were questioned, they were hungry, they were young, their
Right.
parents were there, like, come on, like, why are you doing it? Because the DA wanted you have to convict someone and it was them, they
Right.
didn't know the truth
Right.
because they're so blinded to not look for justice and just be like, no, it's them. And it's they instead of looking at the big picture,
Right.
you know? And it's sad.
It is sad. I was gonna say that's extremely sad that, because it it's just breaking people down to where they just want to get out of there. Yeah, I did it. Can I go now?
Yeah, yes, exactly. There's this saying that I had that I said on my thing my speech today, and it was with Corey Wise. He says, I just wanted to go, and they said I would go, and I still just want to go. And it's sad because,
Yeah.
he was there because he was going to support his friend, and he did the most time out of all of them.
Wow.
And that's sad that the system would do that and break these children and people like me and, others that have been there for 30, 40 years. Another individual that's going to get executed because they don't want to overturn his case. Like, you can't bring him back.
Right.
You can't, after you execute these people that are innocent, you cannot bring them back.
No.
Same thing with, what is the guy first, I can't remember. I'm thinking, but just so many cases that you just can't, you can't undo these things.
No.
And you can give their family justice, but what justice did he receive? When they were executed and put, in death penalty, and they can't give that. They had to die with that guilt on them because that's what society said.
Right.
And that's sad.
It is sad, and I'm sure at a certain point you might even start believing that you did it because they want you to do it. They
Yeah,
wanted you to be the one who did it.
because they keep telling you, you did it, you did it.
Yeah.
It's like, trying to feed you and like, okay, fine, I did it.
Right.
The thing, okay, so I did it. I'm done with it.
Right.
You know, and then not even knowing the impact that it has on you when you confess to just that.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
That is insane. I'm glad that you are an advocate for people like that, and I'm glad that I was able to talk to you. This has been an incredible experience. I wish that we could have done this in person. When I was talking to the guy from the Innocence Project, I wish I could remember his name too. Um, the guy who set this up, but I was like, does she live in Michigan? Because I want to make this happen in person. He's like, no, she's in Texas. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I would have loved to meet you, but maybe one day.
yeah, definitely.
Um, well, thank you for doing this. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, I just, I'm grateful for the opportunity, though. I really am, to be able to kind of discuss, my case, but also to be able to share with you the wrongful conviction and get to know someone, the impact that it's had on me and my family and the other girls. And I appreciate you, putting the story out and educating others, because it's people like yourself that help us in society and, in social media, so people can be educated,
Yeah.
and you might have a chance,
Yeah.
they see your podcast or whatever, and they're like, hey, I remember I'd seen it, how do I get in contact with them, or what can I do, or, and I think that's important. And so I really appreciate the opportunity for that.
Absolutely. Anytime you want to come back on, just reach back out. I would love to talk to you. Um, and I'm gonna send you an email because I want to send you a shirt and everything for the
Okay,
podcast. So
thank you.
yeah, thank you again for doing this. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure meeting you also. Thank you.
Absolutely. Are you on social media at all?
Yes, I'm
Do you
on
want to
Facebook.
plug that at all, or do you not want that out there?
Oh no, yeah, you can share that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Twitter
Okay.
also, and Elizabeth Ramirez. So,
Li-
mhm,
Liz Ramirez.
Elizabeth Ramirez.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can reach out to me through that and anywhere. So, yeah,
Okay.
feel free. And
Awesome.
I respond. So,
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you again for doing this, and I hope you have a good night.
thank you. You too.
All right.